Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 162. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me today. And every week, I know we have a lot of new listeners after we completed the Get It Done Challenge. So if you're not yet a subscriber, you can do that for free. Just go into your podcast app and hit subscribe to Hustle and Flow. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that every new episode, which comes out every Tuesday morning, it's going to be in your podcast app. And if you've been listening for a while and you love the content, you appreciate all of the value that we bring, I would absolutely love it and would appreciate it so much if you would leave a rating and a review. It really does make a difference. And I know people often ask, well, they will say, thank you so much for what you do. Is there anything that I can do to give back? And that is what you can do. Leave a rating and a review. Okay, so this episode is going to be a little bit different than usual. It is a guest episode. As you may know, if you've listened for a while, I tend to go back and forth. So one week is a solo episode where I'm simply sharing some wisdom and knowledge. And then the next week is a guest interview. So we're still on schedule. This week is a guest interview, but it's not a typical guest interview. So normally our episodes are about 30 minutes long and the episode is 30 minutes long. Well, this week is a little bit different. Our guest for today is Mike Michalowicz, and he is currently only doing 15-minute interviews. So I thought, well, I could just bring you a 15-minute interview. And then I thought, no, let's do the full 30 minutes. So this one's a bit of a combo. You're going to get a little bit from me as well as my interview with Mike. So if you're not familiar with Mike Michalowicz, let me tell you a little bit more about him. So I first learned of him a few years ago when someone recommended his book, Profit First. So it is for businesses, entrepreneurs who struggle with paying themselves and oftentimes are really dealing with cash flow issues. And so he wrote a book called Profit First, which really is mind-blowing, and I loved it. And then I got to know a little bit more about him because of some of the people that I know in the online space. So he's actually written a lot of best-selling books. He wrote The Pumpkin Plan. He wrote Profit First. The most recent one was Run Like Clockwork. And he has a new book coming out today called Fix This Next. So Mike is hilarious. He is a super funny guy and he's really smart. He's a serial entrepreneur. By his 35th birthday, he had founded and sold 2 companies. One to private equity and another to a Fortune 500. And so today he's running his third multi-million-dollar venture, which is Profit First Professionals. I don't want to compare myself to him. I feel like that's a little bit narcissistic, but at the same time, let's all own our brilliance. So Mike loves to test and he is really creative in what he puts out there. And I actually just fell in love with his work because of that. I too love to test. I love to get creative. I love to do things just to say, well, I wonder what will happen if we do this. Will it work? And so I follow Mike, not just for his books, but to see whatever crazy and zany thing he is doing in the moment, because I just like to watch what he's testing. And we were in a small group in February, and he was sharing all kinds of stuff that he is doing. And I just love how creative he gets, whether it is with book launches or social media and marketing. His website, new ventures, all of the stuff. It's just love it. I love all of his creative ideas. And I feed off of that energy. But even if you're not into crazy ideas and testing new things and trying to do things differently than others, you're still going to really, really like what he has to say. He is truly a thought leader. And my guess is many of you probably have heard of him. Maybe you've read Profit First or you've read Run Like Clockwork. So you know that he's got really good, solid advice on entrepreneurship and how to run a company. He was actually a former small business columnist for the Wall Street Journal and was a former business makeover specialist on MSNBC. So he speaks all over. He's done a lot of stuff, and I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from him today. And what I'm going to be interviewing him about is his new book called Fix This Next. And I had the pleasure of getting to hear about and kind of see some behind the scenes and a bit of a sneak peek back in February. And as always, was really blown away with what he had come up with. And I went ahead and pre-ordered the book then. And so I don't yet have it. It should be arriving today. So I'll get to dig in with the rest of you, but just know that this is a very brief 15-minute interview, but you're going to want to go get the book to dig in because I think it is going to blow your mind and really help you get focused on what to focus on next in your business. So let's go to the interview. Mike, welcome to Hustle and Flow.
Heather, it's a joy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we were in Lambertville in February.
That's right.
And you were talking about your new book, Fix This Next, that's coming out April 28th. And obviously at that time, we had no idea what was about to happen.
I know.
But I have to say, having heard what you shared then and now knowing what we're going through now, oddly, it seems even more relevant.
Isn't that strange? It's fortuitous timing, but in the worst circumstances. But when I wrote Fix This Next, how it came about was I interviewed readers about 5 years ago. It takes me about 5 years to write a book. And I said, what's your biggest challenge? And people wrote back, and some people wrote back multiple times in the same day with different challenges. Yeah. And that became the thesis for the biggest challenge business owners have is knowing what their biggest challenge is, particularly in crisis. So this book is suited to kind of navigate your way out. I just never anticipated this economic slide that we're experiencing.
Yeah. So let's talk about the concept of Fix This Next, because so much of it is really just where to focus. Because when you have your own business, there are a million things you could be doing and focusing on, but that's a mistake, right?
Yeah, totally is. And you know what? There's a great illustration for the point you just made, Heather, is, and you can do this in your head or on a piece of paper, but if you draw a letter A on a legal pad right in the center and circle it, that's where we stand in the moment. And for many of us right now, it's crisis or challenge. Well, then as a step 2, draw an arrow going away from A for a short distance. And you can draw in any direction you choose. And what the arrow represents is an action that will get you out of the challenge, out of the crisis. And now you can, as kind of step 2A, draw another arrow away from A in another direction. And that points to another selection you could make. And you can do this multiple times. So draw 5 or 6 arrows away from A. Then as the final third step, draw the letter B in the bottom left corner of that piece of paper. And chances are you drew very few arrows pointing to B or none at all. And B represents the vital need your business has, what you need to do, the one thing that'll be of service to the business permanently and move it toward your vision. But most of us are in that, what I call survival trap, making decisions that get us out of crisis, which give us momentary relief, but long-term agony. So we first, before we take actions and make decisions around what's happening in the moment, we have clarity on what is the pathway we need to follow first.
And do you find that the crisis really just brings out what was already there?
Yeah. So I think it was Warren Buffett. I've been parroting recently. He said that when the tide goes out, you see who is swimming naked. And sadly, but truthfully, that is what's going on. As we're in this recession, and I know it's not declared by the government as a recession yet, but it will be, that there's many businesses that had no profitability and they were surviving check by check and they're done already. There's other ones that their management technique is more desperation than direction. And you can see them responding with these massive decisions that are not supportive of the business, kind of like the run on toilet paper. There's one guy down the road from us who has a garage full of toilet paper. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And he's got 50 years of supply. On the flip side, there's businesses that are desperately trying to get loans because they think the debt will be forgiven. but without consideration of why do you need that loan in the first place? There's a fundamental flaw in your business that needs to be addressed if you need to borrow money.
Yeah. So let's say that your business is struggling right now and you're having shame, you're having to do the loans and whatever else. And let's say maybe it doesn't survive. Hopefully it does. But even if it doesn't, it doesn't mean that you are a failed entrepreneur. It means you have learned some lessons to get set up properly the next time.
Oh, yeah. It's all about the journey. There's no failure here. I think there's a failure to act on what we do have. There's a restaurant down the street that I was talking with, and they're legally required to be shut down. And they're like, we're done. They go, we have nothing left. And we talked about it, and they had a lot left. They had their customer list. So we said, what if we just reach out to our past customers and say, how can we serve you in this new environment? What can we do for you now? And here's a funny response. People said, well, I loved your restaurant. I love the 3 or 4 menu items of my 3 or 4 favorites. Can you give me the recipes? So we reinvented the business, if you will, by selling the recipes, selling cooking classes and training. Like they have now their chef coming in and doing Zooms to their customer base, and they have cooking classes for an hour or 2, which is actually potentially more profitable than it was in delivering the food and managing all that inventory, the perishable meats and vegetables.
Yeah. There's such an opportunity for creative ideas and responses right now. With most of my clients, these are the conversations. They're like, well, I can't do anything right now. And I'm like, what? And we start brainstorming, and there's lots of things they could do. But some, and I saw you say this on a video, some people that I'm seeing, they have opportunities, but they just keep saying no. And they're withdrawing. And I saw you talk about this related to idleness and action. And I would love it if you would address it, just because I see so many people, even in my community, really almost becoming a victim of their own circumstance. Yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that anyone that feels that way, that's okay. That simply means you're human and there is a way out. But we're going to have to do what I call block control. I'll explain that in a second. But what happens in crisis, either micro crisis, something shifts in your life, you're in a car accident or something, or macro crisis, which we're experiencing now. Macro crisis even exacerbates things because there's a herd mentality that kicks in. But what happens in crisis is that first there's this shock. You get in a car accident and things come to a sudden stop. It's such disbelief that our mind can't comprehend it. So there's that shock moment where you don't feel the pain. You just are frozen up. And some people's shock is very short-lived. Other people, it's a long period. Yeah. But then we go into often desperate action. Desperate action is where we take these extreme measures, what we think is in the best interest of our survival, but it actually facilitates faster demise. That's where we do this run on toilet paper and fill up our garage. Yeah. But some entrepreneurs move, and what I want people to move toward is simply consideration. And consideration is, or evaluation is probably a better word, to consider our current circumstances, to really understand it, and then pick of all the things that are going on, what's the one thing that we need to do most, and take deliberate action around that. That's the arc we want to go through. The herd mentality amplifies this though. So when we saw the first person making the run on toilet paper, it was kind of funny. When the first 1,000 went for it, it's like they're weirdos to copy that. But then you were a fool not to do it. And that's what we see happening in the business space, that there's people freezing up and other people start freezing up. And then it comes kind of this frozen mentality. When we see a run on something like I need to get loans and people are replicating it. I'm not saying a loan's a bad thing. I'm saying a loan's a bad thing if there's no consideration before that. And what we can use is this thing called block control. And block control is a method of compartmentalizing our actions down to something that's tangible. So many people are frozen because of the long-term consideration or the long-term consequence. I'm out of business. Stick a fork in me. I'm done. So what we do if you feel that way is rewind to, well, what can you do simply in the next week to move your business forward? And now we're looking at a smaller block. Now that may even be overwhelming. A week is a lot of time. So then we bring it down to a smaller block, which is one day. What can I do before the day is out to move at least a small step forward? And if that still feels overwhelming, you can keep rewinding down to the hour and down to the second if you have to. But rewind to these smaller blocks until you have a sense of control and take that small action. It's the accumulation of small actions that drive results. But if we're considering the big action and the big consequence, it could just keep us frozen.
Yeah. But taking action is so important. It's hard to move through something when you're just standing still.
That's so right.
So another thing that I'm seeing a lot and I'm hearing a lot is now's not the right time to sell. And sometimes it's related to their industry, kind of like what you were talking about with the restaurant, but it's also this larger mentality. And again, back in February, I heard you say, and it relates always, right? So this was probably there even before the recession, if these are the feelings, but it's not okay to sell. And I would love it if you would just touch on this, because I think you had shared it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility to figure this out.
Yeah. I find myself getting goosebumps. My blood pressure is raising here because, damn it, it is our responsibility. Now, I want to be clear. There's a difference between being opportunistic, and I think that's what people are afraid of, versus opportunity. Opportunistic is where you take advantage of someone who's disadvantaged. You're leveraging their challenge and problem to your advantage alone. An opportunity is where you're of service to someone that's in a disadvantaged position. You're offering something that can serve them, and you're being equitable, meaning you're being fair to them, but you're also being fair to yourself. So this is not like flogging where you just kind of whip yourself into be of service until you're out of business, because then you can no longer be of service. Right. So to bring about that balance. And why I'm emphatic that this is our responsibility to sell is there is somewhat less than scrupulous people out there right now selling aggressively. They are being opportunistic. And the only way to defeat, if you will, the opportunistic people is by selling. Because if your offering is truly better for the customer, that customer needs to buy. There's a reason they're looking into what you do in some flavor or the other. And if you don't offer it to them, if the good guy doesn't sell it, the bad guy is going to win. So we have to sell. We have to sell in a way that's integral to both the customer and ourselves.
Love it. Fix this next, because I know we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to this because I can't wait. I've already pre-ordered my book.
Oh, thank you.
And I've already taken your evaluation.
Oh, nice.
Do you want to share that? Because I think, regardless of where you are in your business right now, if you're in crisis mode or not, it's a really great way to get focused and structured on where to focus on your business right now.
Yeah. So Fix This Next is based upon a hierarchy of needs or a common DNA in all business. So for attorneys, but for dentists too, and everything in between, there's common makeup, these 25 elements of a business. So we set up this evaluation system at fixthisnext.com. And you can go there right now and click on Take the Free Evaluation. And what it does is it will pinpoint the one thing you should work on. It pinpoints that B in the example we were talking about earlier. And the nice thing is you don't need to email it or download it. You just get it right there on the screen and you can start taking action on it immediately.
Do you want to share the hierarchy at all? I mean, obviously, everyone needs to buy the book, but I think it would be super helpful for them to kind of even hear what that looks like.
Of course. Yeah, let's do it. So the hierarchy, it was a translation from Maslow's hierarchy of needs with one substantial differentiator. Maslow talks about human needs, and we are biologically or neurologically wired into ourselves. We are not neurologically wired into our business, which means, when we trust our gut or instinct, it serves us very well in personal survival, not so well in business. We need some empirical data, some yes-no answers to very specific questions. The business hierarchy of needs has 5 layers like Maslow, but they're specific to the business DNA. The base level is sales. That's the equivalent of creating cash or oxygen for business, if you will. No oxygen, you suffocate. And the real simple question is, do we have any sales? If you have no sales, you have a sales issue. If you have some sales, the next question is, do we have adequate sales to support the next level? The next level is profit. And if you have some sales coming in, chances are you do have an opportunity to be profitable around that. But at the profit level, we consider things like costs and stuff like that. Profit is the creation of stability for an organization. And sadly, I see many businesses focusing on sales right now to sell their way out of these circumstances when they actually need to focus on profitability and stability. The level above profit is order. That's the creation of organizational efficiency. It's where there's no dependency on you as the business owner, and ultimately no dependency on any linchpin employees. It's where you're designing the business to run on automatic. Once that's satisfied, the level above that's called impact. That's where it's not about the transaction the business provides, but the transformation your business provides, where you're actually shifting lives. And I know this happens for many businesses early on, but it can only happen to the magnitude of having sales, profit, and order in place first, the foundational components. And then the highest level is legacy. I found this to be the most fascinating as I was doing my research. Legacy is the creation of permanence. And this is where the business owner realizes they were never a business owner. They're a business steward, meaning they brought something to life that is of greater significance than their involvement and it is meant to live on beyond them. And that's the legacy of a business.
And I think so many, especially in the professional services area, so many people feel that they're just a solopreneur. And I love the concept of thinking beyond that you are a true business and it doesn't just have to end with you. And that's part of what also allows you to, go on vacation and things like that. Refers back to your other book.
That's exactly. We started a business usually for two reasons: personal freedom and financial freedom. If you focus on this hierarchy and build it level by level, that's what you'll achieve.
I can't wait to get the book. Everyone else, go get it as well. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here today. Really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and inspiration with us.
Oh, Heather, this was an absolute joy. Thanks for having me.
Such a great interview, right? I know that was a short one, but we were lucky to have Mike come on and speak with us and talk to us. And so I thought, let's kind of like a book club, let's have a little bit of a discussion around what we were talking about, because I think it's really important to recognize, part of the fix this next concept is that you really should just be focusing mostly on one thing at a time. I think so many of us, we want to focus on everything. We want to fix everything all at the same time. And, if you've followed me for a while, you know that I feel this way about goals as well. Trying to have too many goals and to focus on too many things at the same time, it really just dilutes your efforts and it dilutes your focus, which means it's going to dilute your results. And we have this belief that, they all need attention. They all need fixing all at the same time. And if I give too much attention to one thing, then, the other things are going to be, in even worse shape. So, I'll often hear people say, I have to work on my marketing and I have to work on publicity and I have to work on my team playbook and I have to work on my systems and I have to work on, all the things. And yeah, they could probably all use improving. I mean, there's probably not a company out there that has everything just nailed perfectly the way they want it to. And even if it ever is perfectly nailed, things are going to change. If you are not willing to be flexible and nimble and change with the times, you are not going to have much longevity. So there can really be a temptation to want to have a ton of goals or to want to fix all of the things in your business at once. And I really do love this concept that you can only focus on one thing at a time. I think I've also shared a book that I review every single year. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand. It's called Scaling Up. And it's not, like a hierarchy or the pyramid, kind of like Mike has. But it does have categories. Their categories are people, strategy, execution, and cash. And so similar, I read through each of them, but they're always saying you need to really pick the one thing that you need to focus on the most and really double down on that. So it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything with the other things, right? But you can't put a ton of effort and focus on all of them. And again, same with goals, same with your priorities each and every day. Getting really clear on the number one thing to focus on is going to help you create momentum and to start seeing results in one area such that you can move to maintenance mode while you then go focus on something else and you can slightly shift it. And then that's really how you can experience that growth. And it's always hard. I mean, every time, I try to decide where do I want to focus the most, I really have to look at what's causing the most pain, what's creating the most issues, what would make the biggest difference or have the biggest impact. And it's never an easy decision, but it's so important that you do that you zero in on where you need to focus and allow that to be your focus for a quarter, 6 months, a year. I know last year, we really wanted to focus on systems. And that was our big overall. We had a revenue focus and we had a systems focus. Those were the two big focuses for the year. And so we thought we would even break that down by quarter. And we thought that we could really get our systems tightened up in a quarter. And that was just wrong. It was wrong. We had to work on it all year long. And it's still not where we need them to be. But part of what we learned in that process is, even though the systems create issues for us and we would like them to be better, they're really not that big of a deal. in terms of where our pain points are. They're almost nice to haves. So we've been able to identify what are the systems that we have to get fixed and what are the systems that are just nice to haves. And so even if you have a focus, even if you don't get to where you want to be at the end of the quarter or, 6 months or a year, you are going to have learned so much about that issue and then know where you can focus and where you can let go. So, and I know that, like I mentioned, and as we talked about in the interview, Mike also has an evaluation, an assessment that you can do so that he basically just tells you the area that you need to focus on the most. And the bottom of his hierarchy, the bottom of, his pyramid is sales, because without revenue, without sales, the rest really doesn't matter. I was getting ready to say, unless you're a nonprofit, but even then it matters, because without any kind of revenue whatsoever, you're not going to be able to fulfill your mission. So, if you don't have that down, that creates a problem. And I see this come up with people. I see sometimes people say, well, I can't really focus on business development until I have all my systems in place, because if I don't have these things in place, then I won't actually be able to serve the clients. And to some degree, I agree with that, because if the clients come in and you can't serve them, that's a problem. That's a major problem. You shouldn't be selling something that you can't actually deliver on or execute. At the same time, especially if you're a perfectionist, and seems like most of my listeners are, I am as well, we can start to build this belief that we have to have it perfect before we can start selling. And I think I actually covered this in one of the episodes about the biggest mistakes solos or entrepreneurs make. And that's getting everything perfectly lined up before they actually start selling. You need the revenue coming in the door to even learn. Like, you need clients coming in the door to know how to perfect that system. Revenue and cash, like, that really is the lifeblood of your company and of you being able to pay yourself and to be able to pay your employees and to be able to invest back in the business. So go take the assessment. Or if you know that sales is where you really need to be focusing, go back then and listen to some of the podcast episodes related to that. We can put the links in the show notes, but we had most recently Service Not Sales. We had the marketing matrix. We had how to sell without being salesy. Although the truth is, sales really is the most important piece that needs to happen, because there are so many people that have marketing, like they do all the marketing things, but they're not actually selling, right? So they might be putting an offer out there, but they're not converting. So you really do have to nail sales first and foremost, really, before you even get the marketing down. And granted, it all goes hand in hand, but focusing on the revenue piece is often the most important thing. And so you can go to those podcast episodes, and then also know that we do have the Service Not Sales workshop, and it is a 1.5 day workshop where we go through that end to end with you. We look at, we have you look at the data that you already have related to customers and what's working and what's not working. And even if you think you don't know what's working or not, we help you dig into that and then really come up with a plan so that you can see how it all flows together, how it all fits together, so that you can start identifying and nurturing the right prospects through the best marketing for you and your clients and your niche, as well as doing an entire piece on sales and making sure that you understand the best approach, the best way to ask for the business and to convert that sale, because marketing without sales is not going to help you out. So it really is end to end. We do a full training around that, and you have a plan with it. So if that is an area where you need to focus, we would love to help you do that. That is kind of our sweet spot. And we're doing a road show, but we're also doing it virtual now as well, since we are all working from home at the moment. So those are limited seats for each workshop. But if it's an area where you need to focus, we would love to support you in that way. And you can find out more about that at servicenotsalesworkshop.com. We'll also put a link to that in the show notes. All right, that's it for this week. I was so excited to be able to bring you that interview with Mike Michalowicz. Go order his book. You can take the assessment, come do my workshop, and let's get you more sales in your business. And then when you get that down, you can focus on the next right thing for you and your business. All right, have a great week, everyone. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.